Hello, everyone. This is Marianne from Revealing Light Tarot, Astrology and Spirituality. I have, since I've been reading on Ukraine and Russia, I have a growing number of Europeans who are following this channel, and I devote a lot of time to reading on the US and the UK and also Ukraine and Russia. But I thought I would take some time to look at the EU. So I looked at the EU's astrology chart, which is quite interesting because they have a Neptune and Uranus conjunction, exact conjunction in the 6th house, and a Saturn in Aquarius in the 7th house. All these things point to a difficult union, but one which has the potential to be a force in the future. So when people ask me, do I think, as a clairvoyant, do I think EU is in the past, or is it strong enough to withstand the forces of the present and into the future? I would say that it is going to be one of the dominant players in the future because of that Saturn in Aquarius, because of the work that they've had to do in relation to their unity. But something else has leapt out to me as well, and that is how the Ukrainian fight has unified Europeans. So the first chart I'm going to look at is the EU formation. Then I'm going to look at the current transits as of the 1st of January 2023. And then I will pull some cards, Celtic Cross, to have a look at the main themes for 2023 for Europeans. And also that question, Ukraine having fought for European ideals, is it ever admitted into the EU? So let's get a look at the charts. Bear with me while we bring up the first chart. I think last time I used this software, let me just get organized and bring this in a little bit closer. I think the last time I used this, I was out of the frame. So hopefully I'm in the frame now. The first chart that I pulled up is the EU formation on the 1st of November 1993. In Brussels, Belgium, and this is at 0.00, which in other words is midnight. This was the passing of the single, or the ratification, the coming into existence of the Single European Act, which marked the formation of the EU, 1st of November 1993. Some astrologists here will note, sorry, I'm just hoping that you can see me. Some numerologists, I should say, here will note the numerology in this chart. 1st of the 11th, 1993. 1, the beginning. 11, 1, 1. It's a master. It's a master number. Almost as if it's like the gateway to the spiritual realm. In 1993, another one. If I were to do their numerology, they have 4 ones in the chart. The 9, of course, is a very powerful number of Renaissance. It's also a period of time where we set something up for a new beginning, very close to 10, which is the ending of cycles. And of course, we go back to the beginning, number 1. 3, of course, is a number of spiritual solutions. So when I look at this chart, I just see so much fatalistic destiny type energy here. And it's in the astrology there as well. There's 2 things I go to in this chart. I can't go past the Neptune and Uranus in Capricorn, exact. So Neptune can be illusion, but it can also be something coming into form. Capricorn, of course, is is our cardinal earth sign. It's leadership. It's beginning something. So for the birth of the EU meant, certainly in the ideal, was prosperity for all, a greater prosperity. And we saw the adoption of a single currency, the EU, which wasn't without its pitfalls as well. And we see this in the sixth house, the absolute exact conjunction in the sixth house of sacrifice. Again, the EU, everybody under one banner, but still retaining nationhood, can be difficult. And the difficulty you see, as I say, in all these oppositions, these red lines, the oppositions, the pulling away from one another, the squares, the conflicts, the difficulties, and the blue lines, the trines and the sextiles, a very important trine here. Venus in Libra in the third house, justice. Libra, the sign of mediation, of finding our way through conflict, conflict of the many railing against coming under the one umbrella of the EU, but it's also trining Saturn in Aquarius, and I often say that Saturn in Aquarius is a powerhouse placement. Saturn being the taskmaster, Aquarius the future, innovation. Where is it sitting? It's sitting in the EU's seventh house of partnerships. So that's Saturn in Aquarius, trining the Venus in Libra in the third house of, third house can be siblings as well, brothers, sisters. They have to work at their unity, absolutely have to work at their unity. But the Saturn, the partnerships between each country helps that. We've got Jupiter also in Libra there in the third house. And we see here the square, the hard square, as with Libra, to these Neptune and Uranus in Capricorn conjunctions. So the theme of the EU is continually, I guess, bringing that whole overlay of justice, Libra, the we, sorting out the conflicts, to any that seek to stray away. And Saturn in Aquarius there shows us the work that needs to be put in. And it's trining this Uranus, Neptune in Capricorn, exact conjunction. Wow. Uranus is revolutionary. Uranus is rebellion. Neptune is something coming into form. But the trine, so it's a difficult conjunction. While you have massive change, the formation of the EU, massive change in 1993, you also have Neptune energy there as well, throwing in, well, do we really want this? And we saw, do we really want to be subsumed by the EU? And we saw the UK and Brexit breaking away. That was a period of rockiness for the EU. That was a period of other nations may have spoken about pulling away as well. But there's a trine here up to the moon in Taurus in the 10th house, the public image, the masculine, the outward expression. The moon, of course, is the emotions. In Taurus, determination and stability. So even though others, again, with that powerful Libra and Venus and Jupiter there in that third house in Libra, when there have been this pulling away, equally there's been this pulling toward one another. And I feel this chart talks about stability through unity, but it also talks about a degree of, with Ceres there up in Aries in that 9th house, the knowledge that unity will also bring its own financial gains. And I think in the formation of the EU with that Uranus and Neptune there in Capricorn, I think those that were driving forward the formation of the EU knew that there would be, through these trading blocks, there would be a security, a financial security in this unity. And I think that is one of the underlying themes of the EU. The UK, when it pulled away, lost that trading partnerships, those trade deals, had to go out and find new trading partnerships, discovered that a workforce that moved between countries, addressed both skill shortages and areas of the workforce that where there may have just been a shortage of labours, agricultural industries. So there's much strength and to a degree an abundance here, but there's also this continual pulling away of countries not wanting to be dictated to by the EU and wanting to retain their national heritage, their national ideal, but understanding that if they were to pull away from the EU, the loss would be far greater than this idea that somehow the EU is subsuming their nationalistic identity. Of course, the EU Parliament allows for the expression of each individual nation and each individual nation's concerns. You couldn't go past this chart without noticing the stellium here in the 4th house in Scorpio. Wow. With Pluto there in Scorpio. Wow. Scorpio is so intense, such a deep, deep, deep dive of intensity here. The sun in Scorpio, endings and new beginnings, rebirths. This is a powerful chart. This is a powerful chart, as I said, for the future, for something, Uranus and Neptune, if we look at that conjunction again, something coming into form with Neptunian energy, bringing something, huge into form. Formation of the EU was huge at the time and will continue always to be quite a powerful force for the future. Saturn in Aquarius. But let's go back to this stellium. The sun in Scorpio, Mercury, the planet of mercurial communication, inner, outer communication. Mars, action, moving forward, direct action. Pluto, Mars and Pluto conjunct. Sorry, but these conjunctions are blowing me away. Something, as I said, I just used the word huge. Huge was formed with the EU. It is a force to be reckoned with, but also a very difficult road for the nations to tread with this continual conflict between the I, the one, and the many, the we, the Libra. And Venus there in Libra shows that the we has to be in the EU, the umbrella that covers the many. It's interesting also that in that 4th house, which is home, security, the feminine also, we have their north node is in Sagittarius, again, another future oriented looking sign, one that does go ahead and explore the future. So communication and the way that they communicate with each other is paramount. When their parliament is not inspired and dissolves into a rabble, there you'll see, when you get that fanatical groups that might spring up that might get elected into the EU, it destabilizes. But when Sagittarius is positively expressed, and that's what the North Node is all about, it's bringing forward into awareness that the way that they communicate in the parliament, the dialogue that they have with one another, the way they sort through their problems, the way that they allow equality of voice with all the member states of the EU, it will determine their success. It will determine whether they progress or whether they fight with one another. There's a lot of opposition and a lot of conflict in this chart, but in the conflict and the oppositions come the resolutions. And the powerful placement of these, leaving the aspects aside, the powerful placement, the planets in the signs and the stelliums and the conjunctions show me, and that's Saturn in Aquarius, show me that this is a chart that will survive the present and go on to be a force, even more of a force to be reckoned with in the future. Now, I want to look at the current transits, because in the current transits is where I see the effect of Ukraine on the EU. So let's just take a look at this. Even though this, I mean, I probably could have pulled up Ukraine's chart as well, but then that gets very complicated for straight after Christmas brain. But here we see, just for non-astrologers, lots of blue lines now. So the transits we have here, Uranus and North Node have been conjunct all year. Now with the moon here in Taurus, this stability that's coming to pass. And of course, the trines here to Uranus and Neptune, in a way, the EU was meant for this time, was meant like NATO, which of course is largely European and Scandinavian based, along with US, the defense of Europe. In a way, this was the idea that they needed to unify to stop one or more aggressors, authoritarian aggressors that would seek to take from sovereign states. This is Russia being so close to Europe there, and Ukraine being on the doorstep there of the EU. Ukraine has applied for membership. The idea that the unity could withstand the aggression of the authoritarian dictatorship moving to take sovereignty has come into play. And so the EU member countries, Germany, France, had no, the major players there had no other choice but to support Ukraine, because Ukraine was fighting for EU ideals. Even the right, well, some have described her far right-wing new Prime Minister of Italy has come to heel. Remember, the communication is so important here for the EU. Has walked back some of her more, extreme kind of statements about Russia, and is going to visit Ukraine, because somehow when the EU was formed, it was formed with those ideals of partnerships in mind. So Mars is retrograde in Gemini. Transiting Mars is retrograde in Gemini at the moment. There's an inconjunct down to the EU's Sun in Scorpio, and so there will be, I guess, dialogue that won't be very helpful about. I guess, I go to Turkey there. Turkey is a member of NATO. Also questioning, I mean, this is an EU chart, not a NATO chart, but the unity there, questioning Finland and Norway and Sweden's admission into NATO. Again, Norway isn't a member of the EU, but it does do, it's a member of the very powerful EU economic body, and so its part does trade with the EU. So again, in a way, Ukraine has the war with Ukraine, or the invasion of Ukraine, has exposed fractures in the EU, but at the same time, France and Germany have come to the conclusion with that Saturn in Aquarius, being transiting Saturn in Aquarius, conjunct with the EU's natal, if you like, Saturn in Aquarius. They've had to come, as has Italy, the Italian Prime Minister, come into line with the work that needs to be done to help Ukraine defeat Russia. Because if Ukraine didn't defeat Russia or push Russia back, Russia would then be threatening the EU. And so the EU has had to play a huge role in supporting Ukraine. I mean, it's with a smile, because the transiting planets and in the zodiac here, and the conjunctions with the EU chart make me smile. Transiting Mercury, transiting Pluto and Venus are conjunct with this explosive Uranus and Neptune. So in order to preserve the EU in a way, they do have to defend the sovereignty of one of their neighbours, Ukraine, which means helping them against Russia, despite the fact that they rely on Russia for gas and oil supplies. The sun is in Capricorn, so this is hurting. This is hurting the EU financially, but they can't pull away. They can't pull away from it. Transiting Jupiter, Chiron, is again in the 9th house of the EU, abundance, and also Aries, the war goddess, the planet of rebellion. So again, we see them wanting to pull away from supporting Ukraine, but not having to. So not being unable to. So in a way, Vladimir Zelensky and the Ukrainians pushed to join the EU. It's like they knew. They knew that the EU was a structure in which they must take part, must play a part, because they were fighting for those European unified ideals. And so they've put their application in. So quite interesting. It's like the EU may have dissidents, but in a way, this recalcitrance, not wanting to take part in this, wanting to rail against supporting Ukraine, who's not a member. These countries know that for their continued stability, security, and economic prosperity to a certain degree, they need to literally toe this line here, and that's that Saturn in Aquarius. It's for the future, always for the future. The work that they do now secures and safeguards the future. So it's an amazing chart, and I've felt now, since the invasion of Ukraine, with the unity that's being shown across the West, the EU, the UK. I also have read on the UK and Brexit, and I have always predicted there may be a move in some way back, or partially back, into the EU. But I'll leave that reading there for its own sake. for the UK. I want to draw the Celtic cross and ask that question, will Ukraine ever be, but we'll do that in the second pull. Let's look at the EU. Very, very tough times for the EU. Many countries are going short of heating, having relied on Russian gas and Russia pulling supplies because they're supporting Ukraine. They will always vote for unity, despite that period of time when the EU might have dissolved. This Russian invasion threatening their borders, or so close to their borders, has reminded them of the ideals behind the formation of the EU, and thus Uranus and Neptune conjunct in that sixth house in Capricorn is doing its job of reminding the EU what's at stake if they're not unified. Okay, 2023 for the EU, 2023 for the EU. Tough times, but also big rewards. 2023 for the EU. All right, the moon card. The moon up there in the 10th house in Taurus, transiting moon also, I think there. The Five of Pentacles, tough times. Left out in the cold literally is the Five of Pentacles, but there's also destiny and fate at play here, and things that are long buried coming to the surface. The Four of Cups, this in one way can be disappointment, but there's a cup remaining, and the cup that's remaining is the Ace of Cups. Tough times in the EU right now, which will continue in 2022. In the past, we have the Five of Cups, loss and regret. 2022 has been tough for the EU and member states. Brexit was tough for the EU. The last couple of years has been tough. We have here the Death card in the sky, the ending of something, potentially the ending of something in the sky. The Death card, all those planets in Scorpio in the 4th house. The Sun, Pluto, Mercury. What death is Scorpio energy. Death and rebirth. Death and rebirth. Let's see if we can see the rebirth. The Eight of Swords in the near future. A lot of worry, a lot of feeling like they've been in prison because of I think the support for Ukraine, the energy crisis in the EU, the Eight of Swords. But a lot of the fear won't come to fruition. They'll get through the winter. The Five of Wands, tough times call for, brings forward this energy of partisanship, obstacles, challenges. Not easy time in the EU. Let's see what the environment is around. Moving out of troubled waters. So I think in many ways, 2022 has been one of the most difficult. Last couple of years is expressed here. The energy crisis is expressed here. The rumblings of disunity is expressed here. However, the environment around is one of optimism. The Six of Swords, moving out of the troubled waters, knowing that the future will be okay. And the Judgment card in the hopes and fears that something will come to an inevitable closure. There will be this ending of the tough times. There will be again, that Scorpio stellium. And there will be a rebirth, a newness, the Two of Wands, something coming to fruition in time. This person holds the world in their hands. The phases of the moon is expressed there as well. And this person is looking forward, ready to go again. So 2023 will continue to be a difficult year for EU because of the Ukraine-Russian war or invasion of Ukraine, the energy crisis, but they know that spring is coming. They know that just as we have the ending, just as we have the dying off, we have the new, hence that stellium. The Four of Pentacles, standing their ground, being unified. We have the Knight of Wands, movement forward, the North Node in Sagittarius, the Saturn in Aquarius, always movement forward. And we have the Sun. By summer, by the spring, you're starting to see an easing of obstacles, challenges in Europe, and they will hold their ground, they will stand their ground, they will pull in their finances, their resources, and then we start to see the movement forward. And by summer, you have the Sun card, these two cards here, and we have the Devil, toxicity, but some kind of surprise here. Always the battle in the EU is against the individual nations. So even here, the EU will never be an easy path, but it's one. It reminds me of warring siblings in a way, and knowing that at the end of the day, we are stronger together than we are apart. The Eight of Pentacles, again, the trading, the finances, the King of Wands. I think the EU is going to cut some pretty good, powerful trading deals with various nations. I know that Australia is talking about a free trade agreement with Europe, and the Ten of Cups. Oh God, this is prosperity. And remember I said there's kind of a divinity over the EU. We've got the Hierophant. It represents a rule of law. It represents a very powerful rule of law that the world needs with that Hierophant card. All right, not an easy family to be a member of, but one which provides for a lot of strength. Now let's see Ukraine in a way in lodging its application for EU membership. Knew that if it fought the fight, the good fight against the Russian aggressor, that it had earned its place in the EU. Let's see if clairvoyantly for Ukraine will it ever become. Okay, so I'm seeing Arthur like the sword in the rock. It's driving its blade into the rock through the formation of legends, the legendary fight. Eight of Wands, things moving very, very quickly. Will Ukraine become, please show me clearly, will Ukraine become a member of the EU? Will Ukraine become a member of the EU? Ukraine become a member of the EU. The Hermit, it's isolated, but this is deep thought, deep introspection. Certainly, I think not until victory. Yes, but here we have the card, which was the ultimate outcome for the EU in 2023. I'm not saying Ukraine will become a member state, but it's something, isolation, crossing the isolation is something coming to fruition in time. Oh, gosh, there's the Arthurian legend here. The Ace of Swords, they have might is right. They have blood on their sword from the sacrifices they've made for the European ideals of democracy and sovereignty. What can I say? Yes, one. Yes, they will. And I haven't even read to the end, but let's keep going. The King of Pentacles is in the past. That's the old kind of oligarchical Pluto, Capricorn, Plutonian energy. Plutonian death and rebirth. King of Swords, Aquarian energy, Saturn in Aquarius. This is Zelensky also. He's an Aquarian. That's in the sky. The immediate future, the Knight of Pentacles, proving their worth, consistency, stability. Wheel of Fortune, Jupiter in Aries energy. Page of Wands. This is right now. They're gaining ground here. They have luck on their side. The Chariot also quickly gaining ground. 10 of Swords in the hopes and fears. The death, the sacrifice, the ending of the old. We have the High Priestess. She's very powerful. Neptune in Uranus. Conjunction there in the EU chart. Something that comes to fruition, something that's hidden coming to the surface. The Hanged Man, suspension, a period of time that needs to pass. And we have the Ace of Pentacles. Now we have 2 aces. So not right away, but in the future, Ukraine is going to return to prosperity. The Ace of Cups. I can't go any further. I've got 3 aces and the King of Swords here. The 5 of Cups, a lot of death and sacrifice made. The Lovers, relationships, the Strength, the Knight of Swords, the Soldiers, the 9 of Pentacles. I think as they will be offered a place with the EU, it will be considered. Venus in Libra, Jupiter in Libra as well. It will be seen as some kind of justice that they are given a seat there. There will be dissidents, people who don't want to see Ukraine in the EU, but I have to read these cards. The High Priestess, not something we don't see, but we also see Ukraine's prosperity, reconstruction. We see the Sword of Truth, the Ace of Cups, the Ace of Pentacles. The sacrifice that they have made will not be apparent straight away until post-invasion, when the real extent of the war crimes are unearthed. The world, the EU, will not turn away. Ukraine will get membership of the EU. Okay, that's the way I see it. Thanks for tuning in, and namaste. Peace to you. Peace for 2023. Glory to Ukraine.